So, we are here to talk about AI technology and how we can think about that, in general, helping our human capital strategy that we need to have to make it a consistent world of AI in that federal space. So, really excited to be joined by Pamela and Ryan today. We're going to hop in first with kind of a foundation, if you will, about ServiceNow's AI, generative AI specifically, our platform technologies there, our product and vision, and essentially the structure, if you will, that we're going to be going about creating that new AI technologies, as well as what we have in place today. So, without further ado here, we'll set the stage with almost a little bit of our problem statement, right? Why do we need AI technologies here to help us with the way the world works today? So right now, our constituents, our employees, anyone we serve are desperately in need for whether it be less busy work. We want quick answers to the items that we're asking, quick resolutions. We want personalized experiences so that when we're asking questions, it doesn't feel like an off-the-shelf answer. It's personalized to my question, my experience that I'm having, whether it be in an HR context or a customer service context, right? So we want to touch all of these personas in terms of our constituent, our employees, our agents, and then our developers. I always like saving this one for last in terms of our developers are really the heart and soul of creating and deploying these AI technologies into the platforms that we use today, right? So we want to make sure we're taking that high quality code, we're giving our developers the tools to make them more efficient and serve those lovely AI tools through the platforms that we all know and love today. So, with our problem statement, if you will, kind of laid out, what's our vision here? Where do we want AI to be? And most importantly, what are our customers asking for in terms of where they want AI to be for their agents, their employees, and beyond? So, first and foremost, we want to be able to ask the natural language questions and receive direct, personalized answers. So going back to that personalization that we kind of laid the foundation there for. We want to make sure that when our employees are asking for things like what's my PTO policy, what's my leave policy, that we understand the context of that particular employee. Where are they located? What is their current leave balance? So utilizing some of our generative AI tool sets, we have the capability here to understand that holistic context for that user's persona and provide that personalized response, that personalized answer. Now, next up, the second kind of pillar, if you will, that we have from the vision and the roadmap perspective is not just getting that information. That's just one part of the puzzle. Next, we want to be able to take specific actions through those conversational interactions, whether it be through, say, a virtual agent, a portal, and we'll get more into that omni-channel experience here in a little bit. But understanding what your leave balance is one thing. Unless I can take action on it, that's really the next best step, if you will, right? To be able to take action, to be able to provide that holistic experience to our employees and our constituents here. So with those two pillars in mind, we have some further guardrails in terms of what's really going to make these AI tool sets give us the most bang for our proverbial buck here in terms of making an impact for our employees and our constituents. So for one of our first pillars here is that omni-channel experience, right? So this lovely, we've got our pillars here to be able to ask natural language questions, get responses that are personalized and take action, but we also must meet folks where they are. So this is where we get into that concept of, are we interacting with our agencies, our employees through an office worker persona where they're using common browser search technology, maybe virtual agent, text messages, Teams, or are we dealing with more of a deskless worker persona where they're using a mobile device or from that text or maybe even a voice channel? And then, of course, the portal that can stream both personas there. But ultimately, we want to reach our folks where they're at. whether they're in the mobile device world, whether they're in the normal browser world. So first and foremost, that omni-channel experience we really want to take hold of. Now, next up, we want to make sure that the information providing and informing our generative AI answers come from data that exists and is relevant to that user. We understand our data is very vast and spread out amongst many systems throughout our ecosystem. And so we want to make sure that we can supply the appropriate knowledge when appropriate to our end users to help inform and further personalize those solutions. So not only our external knowledge bases, maybe your HCM or other portals, other sources of information that exist within, say, an applicant tracking system or other portals, other data centers, data sources, if you will, that you might have to be able to provide those more personalized results to our employees. Now, next up, and I always love this one, being proactive. So we talked about meeting our employees where they are in terms of that omni-channel experience, making sure they have the data from other HR systems that they might need. But next up is that proactive nature in, I like using our example here. We're coming up to the end of the year, right? We've got holidays right around the corner and we're all starting to plan for our time off. What if our AI can be truly proactive, engaging those employees with their upcoming time off balance? Hey, we're reaching a certain point where we've got, say, a 2-week window where we want to make sure all of our employees have their PTO scheduled for the rest of the year. Your balance will exceed X number of days and it might expire at the first of the year, right? So making sure that we're proactive in those types of communications, but also proactive depending on where those personas might live. So again, going back to that office worker and deskless worker type of personas, depending on those personas, it's going to shift how we're communicating with those individuals. Now, next up, we want to make sure to support our employees across any department and business service that they might be interacting with. So and I'm sure if you've attended any business service tech talk, if you will, you've probably heard that mantra of our employees don't necessarily care whether they're talking about a payroll issue to HR or the finance team, or an IT phone issue, whether it's, again, HR, finance, facilities. We've got all of these different departments, different business services that we're offering to our employees and our constituents. And so being able to provide a unified portal, a unified way to access these services, kind of going back to our omni-channel experience there as well, but even further, taking that a step further in terms of not having to know which department, which subject area expertise that we really need to interact with, being able to create technology that takes us down the correct path without us even really realizing it is really what one of our main goals here is. And then last but not least, in terms of the core guardrails that we have in this vision for what generative AI needs to be, is knowing when not to engage. We've talked a lot about where we want to engage, how we want to engage employees, what kind of information we want to surface to them. But sometimes the most important piece is to understand, especially with generative AI being such a cutting edge technology, we want to make sure we have the appropriate guardrails here so that when employees, and I said when, not if, but it's really more of a when, they interact with us on a certain sensitive issue, that the AI has that guardrail to be able to say, I'm going to pause and not interact with this employee on this particular issue. Instead, I'm going to offer an empathetic response and then direct them to, say, a live agent or to submit an HR case, for example. And this is crucial, right, when we come to introducing new technologies to our employees. We want to make sure that they have that safety and transparency going into these conversations and this new technology. Now, last but not least, as part of a capstone, if you will, of course, this is our magic wand. We want it to be easy to implement and easy to maintain for our administrators. We understand that generative AI technologies in particular, our large language models, they are complex. We're dealing with billions, if not trillions, of pieces of data and neural nets and all of the fun technology that comes with that. But what's great about the ServiceNow platform is we've introduced these features in such a way that we can activate and slowly but surely implement the skills that you need most when you need them. And we're providing those administrative tools to be able to do things like diagnose. We talked about the developer tools to be able to, on the fly, create code with from text or flows from text, right? And so providing these tools, providing these guardrails is of course really one of our core tenets going into the generative AI revolution. All right, now having said that, so we understand better our vision, our roadmap, right? How are we creating these tools? What are our guardrails in terms of putting these into the world, right? So with that, of course, comes some questions in terms of, well, what kind of use cases are going to be right for our agency or our mission statement to be able to introduce to our employee base, to our constituent base, to our ServiceNow base? What kind of governance do I need to have in mind in terms of making sure that we're following the appropriate transparency, mindset as we're going forward? And then, of course, that realization of value. Is there a point in time where we need to think about that build versus buy conversation? Do we need to look at the out-of-the-box skill sets that ServiceNow, for example, is providing or other tool sets? Or do we need to think about custom skills that might enhance our agent or employee experience even further? Now, we're just scratching the surface today. We have tons of resources out there to be able to help you answer those questions. And of course, this is just kind of a starter, right? We're sprinkling the initial seasoning on our, our proverbial holiday dinner, if you will, since we've got holidays right around the corner. But I present this in a way to plant those seeds, right? These are the types of questions that we want to be able to take into account when we're going down that roadmap of introducing these new technologies into our ecosystem. Now, to wrap up in our kind of introductory, what is generative AI / how are we thinking about it and interacting with our personas? Our commitment, right? So we've developed these tools in such a way, of course, they adhere to the most recent White House mandates in terms of security, transparency, accountability, in terms of the model cards that we're coming out with our large language models, right? We are dedicated to providing source specific, if you will, service management specific large language models to be and to meet you where those domains are, right? In the world of HR, in the world of ITSM, in the world of customer service. And so being able to provide that with the secure platform and data that you know and love today is really goes towards our commitment here in terms of providing the cutting edge technology that you're used to today with the ServiceNow platform. All right, so with that kind of intro, laying the foundation for what does the world of generative AI look like in the ServiceNow platform, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ryan here, and he's going to talk about some great use cases in the AFS world. So I will stop sharing.
Thank you.
You're
Afternoon,
welcome.
everyone. Let me know when this comes through here. Can everyone see?
Looks good.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. Ryan Downey. I have a few slides to go through today to kind of capitalize on what Kathy laid the foundation for us, how us at Accenture are going to market and envisioning the use cases for generative AI with ServiceNow. A few metrics on those processes we go through, where we see this kind of going. And then I have a couple of use cases to end with for some of our federal, for some of our public sector and federal clients, mainly focusing on the human capital space, as it would. So to kick off, the first slide you're seeing here, we can probably all remember where we were when ChatGPT hit, what your first use case is, when you started using that. And you can realize that new advancements are coming almost weekly. As they're constantly coming, what we're seeing is the two general terms as we're going to market with our clients is they're focusing on the enterprise solution for their own large language models, or they're kind of bringing to that conversational use space and action the workflows. We've kind of determined that, for employees, maybe it is as simple as a Teams bot, Microsoft Teams bot, answering questions, getting information back, and from the resources and it's answering the client. Maybe for the employees or the workers in the back end, they probably need to be in that system. So really showing them that you don't have to choose and go two different paths, because with the ServiceNow platform, you have the option to take all these use cases in and integrate with them where you're at today. Whether you're just getting started and using your conversational speeches, or you're already more advanced with your own large language models, or both. We can kind of integrate them together. And those are some of the use cases we'll go through a little bit later. The value that we've seen here as the value levers as we're breaking it down for our clients and going is what we've already talked about, is that user experience, having them be a seamless experience, get the answers faster, and whether it be in through that portal, that in-person voice chat bots, and then really start to gain the efficiencies and the qualities as you're coming down from the other side. So less work needed to get to the higher levels, because you're getting more and more productive from the higher level and bringing that down. And where we really see that here is on the use cases in the conversational AI, process intelligent automation, and your agentic AI automations. Some of the flows we're going through here and talking about, how this is kind of transpired as everything's going so fast today, and updating weekly here. We realize that now you can have all the automations, from whether it be starting the first steps, starting the conversation, or even the entire process. Talking about those automations, as we talked about earlier, that service catalog, doing a request, having the AI automatically submit that, having the skills populate and do some of that unstructured data for you, or even having some of the agentics doing the steps for you, putting the AI to work for the agents, kind of walk into that process and delivering some of that efficiencies for the end user and the employees. And that's what we realized, that the most value and the return on investment really comes for the productivity for the agents and the responses and the efficiencies that the end users ultimately experience from that. So again, we've heard time and time again, as we're going to our new clients and doing these questions here, is like, what is it? Is it just summarization? People do it online. The question is, has it, beyond the hype? And we have in our experience, have thousands of clients delivering generative AI across the board in all the industries, going through, whether it be through the industry for our federal clients, for enterprise, market penetration, and our development use cases. So we have gone to market in thousands of experience and projects, delivering value daily on all those. So, making improvement decisions making, big use cases in the software development and the efficiency and quality, and really just that return on investment for the end users and their clients. So when it comes to the, one second. So when it comes into the ServiceNow realm, we've had over 300 client discussions, and the patterns we're starting to see as we have those and where they're interested in deploying this is in that customer service. This is really the priority for that C-suite. And then I think what we talked about here is this in the HR and the IT is that employee experience, and just really the cost savings you're going to value from that. And the impact on your core business from your workflows, and being more competitive as you can achieve more in this process. And then innovation and services. So multiple product gains by GenAI and the long-term commitments to allow the investments. Like I said, you don't have to have your solution day one. You can grow that use case. If you already have your LLMs for that process, if you're starting with ServiceNow, kind of meet in the middle and grow that process together as you see fit through this process. So what we've kind of determined as we go to market and where the use cases strongly fit and how to achieve it better is really to define those, the design decisions and make sure we deliver AI reliably deliver, can't talk today, reliably deliver AI and drive the adoption. So really kind of define what the process and the value is. Make sure you have the owners that are trained. It's not easy to turn that on, but make sure they understand the processes they're going to go through and where they're going to end up. Then we kind of design that use case, make sure it's built reliably and the prompt search reliability. Make sure it goes to the testing UAT and then the org change enablement to make sure we're continuously adopting this, it's being responsible, and we're continuing to grow the use case as it goes. some of our use cases. So where we've actually delivered this today. So I have 2 use cases today. This is a little precursor of how we walk through this for one of our clients. Stepping through here, kind of seeing where we are, and this is that broader adoption that I was talking about that you don't have to necessarily choose. Started off with a POC and a pilot. That was an AI assist app. Then we kind of brought in ServiceNow for the Now Assist. We kind of brought in the app space and the app creator for the out-of-the-box functionality, and slowly rolled these together. Then we brought in the case summarization, and we started to bring in the case management for the ticket and case summarization, both in the first wave for ITSM, then for our ASR case management. Some of the use cases we talked about is like the exit, leave of absence. Then as we're starting to divide those KPIs and build the dashboards, then we we brought in the KP search for virtual agent, article creation. And then we brought in additional use cases. You kind of see how in tandem we're able to bring in some of the custom AI assets to bring in their own large language models, and then how we put those together through the ServiceNow platform to bring in with the Now Assist and some of the features there for the agent, the employee. We also have text to flow for the engineers to create for citizen development, to create those scripts and throughout the process. And the values we realized through this is still ongoing. As you can see, the last one was in April, so we're still gathering those metrics, but we did show those expectations of what we're starting to realize and those benefits, that reduction in incident volume, the wrap-up times for the agent to deliver their work. And the big one was the increase in developer productivity, the ability to generate the scripts from text to speech using those low-code options has really helped increase the productivity there. And really kind of turn from that reactive to that productive mindset when utilizing generative AI. And our last use case for a federal customer, we teamed up with ServiceNow and we hosted a hostathon for a GenAI hackathon, with the main goal to get the client in the room. There was 100 users in the room, clients and developers and some of our team, to host an all-day work session to kind of build these stories out, provide what they're looking for, show the use cases and how we deliver this value quickly and what the possibility of it is. Mainly, it was focusing on the GenAI search and the virtual agent powered by GenAI, with the customers separated case files and knowledge articles outside the system. And within 60 days, we were able to deliver and load those over the 3,000 knowledge base articles for those users to search. So I think we were able to deliver that in about 45 days. And then, to use those summer resources for the critical areas, reduce the costs, and really provide that case summarization and knowledge article that you see in the case there. We were able to deliver that, as I said, in about 45 days. I think that is for me. So I will pass it back.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Kathy. Great here for today. So for all those on the line, don't forget, if you have a question, please feel free to write it in the Q&A area or in the web chat. What we'd like to do for this last portion of the webinar is sort of have a fireside chat with our 2 presenters today. I've got a couple of questions that I'd love to ask you guys. First, I'd love to start off with you, Ryan. As you were talking about that last use case, you talked a little bit about the knowledge base and the knowledge base content. Do you have any recommendations or maybe any tips or tricks for how content should be formatted, or any thoughts you can provide to our audience as they're thinking about their journey around this?
Yes. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes, a great question. So really understanding, stepping back, and kind of what we did for the client that 60-day is we stepped back and we didn't guess what their data was. Really got in there, understand where they were today and what they were thinking. They came to us with a lot of questions and kind of pre-assuming that they couldn't do this because they needed to have their data cleaned or do these processes. And we were able to quickly show them that's not the case. We were able to bring this into the platform and use the large language models to start to pull that data in and provide that generative AI, the GenAI search. And there's very little to no update for them. There was some cleaning, obviously, but the fear of them getting started because their data where there was at almost hindered them. And within one day, we were able to walk through. So have those discussions, just start to show your data, in context of, I know you don't want to show all your data, but show what you have and don't just assume that you're not ready. So I think that was the biggest use case for us.
Okay, great. Great advice, because we all might be ready right now, right? So, Kathy, I want to go back to something earlier that you talked about. You were talking about, some of the questions that employees ask and some of the responses coming back could include some very sensitive data. I want to dig into that a little bit more. With such a fast-moving, emerging technology such as Gen AI, what guidance would you have for our audience around ensuring a responsible approach to protecting that sensitive employee information?
Yeah, and that is paramount, right? Especially to our HR folks, the human capital. We are ultimately stewards of the most important data that our agencies can house. So with that absolutely comes a great deal of responsibility to make sure that not just ServiceNow, but any third-party vendor that we're talking about integrating from just an integration or AI perspective, of course, in this context, we want to make sure we understand how the data is handled. Does it ever leave our data center, and for what purposes? Is our data being used to train external LLM data sets? And so, for example, in the world of ServiceNow, any of our GCC or regulated market customers, we immediately, before we even go live with any generative AI, we never use that type of data to train from our GCC instances to train any of our general purpose or domain specific LLMs. So that's just one example of something that we need to investigate as we go forward in terms of forming our governance, right? Making sure that we're asking those questions of our third party folks, making sure that they're being transparent with the practices, making sure we understand the model cards of the large language models that are being used to understand how the data is being cleansed, how the data is being integrated.
Great, thanks. Now, I know on a call, we probably have some customers who already own our human resource service delivery solution and some who don't. Let's dig into maybe, are there any certain features or prerequisites for those who already own HRSD with deploying Gen AI or Now Assist?
I can take that one initially here. So depending on the skill, you will need certain pieces of data. So for example, if you want to take advantage of our Now Assist for search, that is going to rely on your knowledge bases. So we were just talking about knowledge and the formatting and making sure that it's in good shape. So of course, to utilize and to get the most value for the Now Assist summarization of knowledge articles and or catalog item suggestions, we want to make sure we have a healthy knowledge base. We don't want duplicate knowledge articles. We want to make sure that it's contextual for our employees. And so things like that, we do have kind of think of it like a prerequisite to have a healthy knowledge base. Now, for other skills, you don't necessarily need to have, pre-existing data or things like that in your ServiceNow instance. So, for example, many of our clients are taking full advantage of utilizing the chat summarization and case summarization features, as well as things like generation of resolution notes. Now, for those ones, it relies just on that specific case records data, right? The activity stream, the description that had come in about that case record. And so there, we don't necessarily need a full-blown knowledge base or other items to help inform the information there. We're using that context of that case record itself. So it depends on which skills we're looking for, but there certainly are general prerequisites that we would recommend, like having a healthy knowledge base and things like that for things like the virtual agent and your not Now Assist for search.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kathy. So I'll throw this one over to Ryan, since you're part of the implementation and the rollout team when customers are deploying this. What about the customers that don't own HRSD today, but want to deploy this? Can they roll it out in parallel, or do they have to do it in a particular order? Or what would you recommend as some best practices for that? Oh, you're on mute. There we go.
There we go. Okay, sorry. Too fast in clicking the button there. So the customers who are not on HR today, they're HRSD today and going forward is what the question, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yes, I would say to start to analyze your use cases and where you're at and make sure you know the processes you're going to implement for that, and have those discussions and build your roadmap as you start small and start to get those early wins as you're rolling this out. As for to run them out in parallel, as Kathy said, you do have to have some data to start to run this. So if you're starting to search there, you do have to have those inputs. So depending where you're at in your maturity model for your human capital in general, maybe not so much as your human capital for HRSD, I would recommend starting small with your processes, getting onto the HRSD platform, and then realizing those use cases as you start to gather that data and those processes for your search stuff there. As for your agents and delivery there, you can start to utilize some of those processes and automations from the AI from the start, depending on your maturity.
Okay, great.
And one example, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to add on there. So the one that I didn't mention in the previous question was Now Assist for Virtual Agent. We didn't talk too much about that yet. And so that is an excellent example where if you are a live HRSD customer today, not using our generative AI version of Virtual Agent, but maybe you're using the natural language understanding NLU version of our virtual agent, there is a difference, so to speak, in the way that we can, I would call it, rapidly create and interact with a virtual agent if we start with the generative AI version. So for example, we can take advantage of conversational catalog items where we don't actually have to have a developer create the back and forth between the conversation. We don't have to code for it. We can take advantage of a natural catalog structure and then go live essentially on day one with pre-formatted virtual agent conversations from a conversational catalog perspective. So there are some interesting nuances when it comes to the different skills that can be analyzed here in terms of virtual agent being one where that could rapidly increase your time to value if you take advantage of that as a net new HRSD customer. Now, of course, not to worry if you're an existing HRSD customer taking advantage of virtual agent. We do have migration paths and all that fun jazz to get you spun up as quickly as possible in the world of generative AI. But wanted to add that kind of as a nuance that we might see depending on the skills that you're looking towards implementing there.
Great. And as people are thinking about this and rolling it out and putting their plans together, change management, it's a big part of this. I know, Ryan, on your presentation, you were talking a little bit about, hey, have some organizational change management in place. Are there any other best practices or any other considerations that you can share around how an agency can get prepared or prepare themselves or the folks that are rolling this out?
Yes, I mean, as I said, kind of that approach there is being prepared. Some of the pushback as the OCM is, I think we've all heard things, is it going to take my job or nothing like that. So really it's focusing on the training and understanding the value that you're going to gain from this. It's really focusing on getting the skill sets for your team that's going to be doing this and utilizing this just the same. And to make sure they understand what they're going to do next when AI is starting to help them do their job, how they can do it faster and better and get those improvements, and to then grow those skills and divert their time elsewhere, not necessarily replace their time. So that's kind of the big change. You want to make sure you bring them into the conversation early, and so they understand what the use case is going to be and how it's going to help them. That's kind of what we've seen to be where we usually start at.
And not to get too far ahead, but just thinking about sort of the next phase of this, you mentioned a little bit also, Ryan, in your presentation, this agentic AI. Can you share some thoughts on how this topic and how you see agentic AI factoring into HR and the employee experience?
Yes. Yes, to understand how that's going to really, we talked about so far how generative AI has helped the employees and the end users today to streamline that process, to start to answer some of those questions, route those processes for the agent as well, but now really putting that power into the agent's hands themselves. So not just utilizing some of the information that's coming in to help the flow, but really to automate some of those more mundane, I don't want to say mundane, but automate the tasks that you can do. That when you have a process that you were strictly following and submit a request, and a request comes in to work this ticket and push it forward on the case, like there, AI start to push those steps for you, complete those tasks, and to help you streamline the process, but keep you involved in the flow as it goes. So as the agent is kind of working and putting almost bots in work for you. So you have the agent AI kind of doing those actions and checking in with you every step. So you're no longer getting the information, getting the answer, and doing the steps. It's completing the steps for you, asking you and approving those steps as you go through at a high level there. And Kathy, if you have anything to pass over on that.
No, yeah, I always like to think about agentic AI at the base level. We're talking about giving AI agency, right? For those that don't know, that's where the phrasing comes from. And so we are giving AI the agency, as Ryan said, to make some of these decisions, to do the analysis on their own. We still absolutely want humans. You'll hear the phrase human in the loop transition to maybe human on the loop. Still yet to be determined how that's going to work out in our linguistics, but a little interesting thought experiment there. So the humans will still absolutely be involved in the verification, or essentially in that true decision-making skill that we truly do want humans to be involved in before it gets sent to someone's performance review. For example, I was just talking with a customer. We were doing an example about scoring agents on a quality assurance perspective. And they're like, well, we still want humans involved before these types of metrics get sent to that person's performance review and affect things like pay. And like, yes, absolutely. That's good that we still want humans in the loop at certain points in time. But the collection of that data, the summarization of that data, the presentation, that can absolutely be automated to a point where we can release these agents into our workforce. The final note that I'll say, we've had some interesting conversations with our customers when talking about this agentic AI. Think about it in terms of just like another employee, another human agent, if you will, in your ecosystem. You're going to be going through a process of onboarding or offboarding or training and coaching of these agentic AI bots that are in your ecosystem. There will be times that a mistake, or you want to adjust the way they presented something. You can provide that coaching to that agent, to that bot, to be able to then move forward, so that the next time this similar ecosystem or a series of events happens, right, we've made that change. So that's another kind of frame that I like to help customers think about the world of agentic AI. How is this going to change, from the bot experience that I'm used to today to what tomorrow might look like.
I like that term, human AI, right? So it's taking that sentiment and learning. We do have a question that came up in the chat, so I'll just throw it out to our speakers here. So for an HRSD customer not deployed yet, is there AI functionality you would recommend that we include now versus later? Our current developers are not even considering this, and there seems to be gaps in skills to make this happen.
I'll let Ryan take this one first, since he's on the implementation side.
So I'm going to read this one more time here. So I guess, is there AI functionality you recommend? I think implementing, so I want to make sure I understand this. Is this more from like the developer standpoint and getting this started with like the contextual catalog items or the generative AI search, or are you talking just starting from scratch and where you're going with this? Because if you're starting from the developer standpoint and consider this
Starting from scratch.
starting from scratch, yes. I would define your process. Make sure you're including some of the agent functionality for your the chatbots we talked about earlier, getting those conversations, working to make sure your knowledge base is complete and getting information in. I would start focusing on as you're building your models and getting your data there. And then focus on just deploying the rest of HRSD first and getting those users into the system and focus on your OCM there. Don't know if that answered your question, or Kathy, you have any more elegant way to say it than I did?
No. I think it is smart to. You still absolutely want to focus on your core, right? There's going to be core HRSD stuff that we have to set that foundation before we introduce the world of AI. The maybe two things that I'll reintroduce that we've kind of dabbled in the previous portion of the conversation here. One, think about things like the virtual agent conversational catalog item skills. So that's an example where it could drastically save your developers time if you're thinking about going live with a virtual bot, virtual agent for employees. It could save time in they can focus on creating the catalog items in the manner that they need to and not have to focus on creating virtual agent conversations that are hard coded or that they have to expect what the end user is going to say. So that can be a huge time saver, especially when we're thinking about from scratch HRSD customer. Definitely like what Ryan said about the knowledge base. Another really good one that you could take advantage of on day one, or call it day two maybe, of your go live is that assuming you have a healthy knowledge base going live, is the summarization for search. And mostly I emphasize that one as well as kind of the second item here, because that's an example where it's going to be a change to the end user's interface if you decide to go live later. Not that that's a crazy big deal, but just understand that each time you introduce a new AI skill, it's going to be a slight increment in change. So you just want to make sure your end users are prepared for that. So sometimes if you've got the right foundation to go live with that, it could be smart to go live with it on day one versus having to wait 30, 60 days down the road to see that impact.
Thanks. All right, so I want to thank both of our speakers today, but I want to ask you one last question each. So maybe I'll start with you, Ryan. So we've talked a lot about GenAI today on this session. If you could pick one key theme or one key takeaway for our audience that you would highlight, what would that be?
Ooh, that is a good one. So one key theme is it can be overwhelming, as I've said, and I kind of generalize this for our clients, but in some form, it just seems that with the mandates going forward, everyone wants to get in there. To stop and think through the process you want, make sure you understand the value you're going to get from this, and start that process, and then still jump in, but don't jump in when you don't realize the value just to say you're going to turn it on. Because we've seen clients say they've come in and just turn it on and it should be good to go, and they're not seeing that. And to points like where they've turned on GenAI search and their knowledge base, they did not put thought into their knowledge base or something like that, and they're not achieving that value. So start small and understand the process you want, and then make sure you're getting those questions answered as you start this process. Especially like Kathy said, like starting there, starting off in the delivery, making sure if you want to start with that search, put more forethought into your knowledge base and your articles and delivering that functionality first. So just understand the value you're going to achieve first, and then jump in. So
Great advice. Kathy?
Yeah. So my final thought, and I like to leave this as almost a little mini thought experiment in the world of AI, the world of the changing technology that we're experiencing now. So if we think about our human skill half-life, right? So the skills that someone may have learned on the job in, let's just say, the 1970s, 1980s, would have a skill half-life of roughly, I think, 20, 25 years, meaning the skills that they learn on the job back then, 40 years ago, would last them through most of their career. Today, in today's ecosystem, our skill half-life, some are estimating it to be as short as 18 months. So 20 years to all of a sudden a year and a half, where I need, as an employee, to continually be adding to my toolbox, improving, sharpening my iron to, continue just doing my day job. So my point in saying that is to re-emphasize here, when we go live with these new tool sets, having that empathy for our employees that have to learn these new things is going to be very important. We want to make sure that we're guiding our employees through this journey, that we're teaching them along the way, that they understand the why, right? This is going to make our entire organization, our entire agency more efficient. We're going to be able to deliver better services, whatever that core mission statement is going to be. We truly want to make sure we connect with the employees as we go through this journey. So a little bit of a different taste and flavor there, if you will, on a final note, but keep our talent in mind, right? We don't want to lose anybody prematurely here. So
Great thoughts.
That's
So
a
I
great
don't
thought,
see any
actually.
other, yeah, I don't, sorry, Ryan.
No, I said that was a great thought to end on. So
Yeah, exactly. So I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I will hand it back over to Kaylee.